Hi everyone. What I want to talk in today's video about is the planning that's involved in taking the train when either you have a physical disability or you've had some type of injury such as a broken bone and am using crutches, a cane, or walker during your recovery, or if you are finding that you're getting older and climbing stairs is harder, most of this information will also apply to you. What you're looking at on the screen is the view from the train I took on a recent trip to spend time with one of my closest friends and some of his buddies that came to Montreal. And I thought it would make nice footage to look at while I'm talking about this. When I went to Montreal, there was sort of three stages in the planning. The first had to do with medications and the supplements that I take for my physical disability. Medication is dispensed maybe for every 4 weeks, or some medications are dispensed every 3 months. And some of the supplements that I take, the bottle of it lasts for between 3 and 6 months. So starting to think about the medications first and planning for what you need to go with you makes sense. What I use is a pill dossier, or in common words, a pill box. And the one I'm using, it takes a little bit of force to open it. So I felt that it was going to be safe in my suitcase as long as it was contained in a Ziploc bag. So if one of the compartments did open, the medications would still be contained and would be available for me to use while I'm gone. What I brought with me were 4 days worth of the medications in my pill box. And then I brought, the Tylenol, Advil, a numbing gel, and anti-nausea medication that I kept in my hip sack. And this meant that when I needed the medications for being in pain, those were right with me, and the others were more predictable, and I just ensured that if we were going to be out every 12 hours when I'm supposed to take them, that I had that with me before I left. It takes a little bit of thinking, but you can do it. If you don't use a pill box, another idea would be to go to your pharmacy and have the medications put into a blister pack. So that's when they'd be visible on one side, and then you'd puncture through a thin foil layer to get them out when you go to use them, and they'd kind of be on a thicker paper labeled for when to take them. So the next part had to do with what I was going to need while I was there for mobility. And in this trip, I brought my manual wheelchair and my crutches, and that was all that I needed. I have gone on other trips where I've had a separate suitcase that contained more because I was going to be gone for longer, such as when I brought my power wheelchair, I needed the charger to come with me. And you can think about what you would need For example, a woman might need to plan for having menstrual cycle pads with her. Or, I've got a plastic mill urinal that I often use during the night time to empty my bladder because falling would be a very real risk. But if it was only for one night, it changes the risk-reward equation. But something to talk about and decide what you need. And then for me, the last stage of planning for clothes, I did the day before where I did my laundry 3 days before so that I had time to recover if I had a hard day. And I tend to see clothing as the last thing that you would pack, and that's because it's going to be needed for your day-to-day life before you leave. And of course, this is opposed to where medications and supplements are dispensed in a greater volume than you'd have for clothes. What you could do, and what worked really well for me on this list, or on this trip, was to make a list and have it with me and work my way through it as I was planning for the trip. In terms of the train, it honestly is not a big deal to Via Rail Canada. They have both the equipment to get you onto the train, and it's something that the staff at Via Rail Canada are doing regularly. It only requires that you express what you're needing so that they're able to assist you. The stations that are manned, they have a manual wheelchair that can be used to load you onto the train. In this instance, because my manual wheelchair was coming with me, the station where I live asked me if I would mind using it to load me onto the train, and I said that's not a problem. And then I just used my crutches to get to my seat while they stored my wheelchair for the travel. The most important part of this was when I booked the ticket, I indicated that I was requiring assistance. There's now the option on the Via Rail website where you can request this. And it's the same type of options that the call center has in booking a trip if you're wanting to talk to a person. But if it's easier to talk it over with the agent on the phone, I would encourage you to do so. Or if you know a trip's upcoming, you could even go to the station because they're the ones that deliver the assistance, and they'd be able to assuage fears or anxiousness that you might be feeling for getting you on the train. I did want to emphasize that I've used the Via Rail assistance getting on the train as my legs deteriorated. So what I mean by this is that there were trips where I was on crutches and I knew I couldn't manage the 3 steps required to get onto the train car, but it wasn't a big deal, and they just brought out the ramp and I just stood on it as the ramp was raised up to train level. So this is why I say, if you're elderly and you're finding it difficult climbing stairs, this is available to you. It's not limited to someone that's in a wheelchair needing that help. The same would go if you're wearing one of those plastic boots from having an ankle or foot fracture, a cast, or some other one-off injury like a walker or using a cane. The Via Rail staff were genuinely interested in helping me, and they didn't They didn't even ask what was wrong with me. They just needed to know how to help me. And they were good at doing so, I might add. There is an educational section on the Via Rail website that talked about what they have to offer, including videos showing how it's offered and how it's, what's used to help a person. I think the biggest lesson of this all would be to double check if the train station you're going to is more like a bus stop where it's not manned. When a station's not manned, the equipment's not there to load you on and off of the train. But any primary, so that's a major city, for example, Toronto, Montreal, or any smaller village, but still has a manned train station like Woodstock, Ontario, for example, they have the ability and the desire to help people on and off the train. I did want to touch on the issue with food. It's not a big problem if you bring a bagged lunch for use on the train. If you're in first class, the cost of the meal's included. But if you're in economy, you can bring your own food, and it's really not a big deal to the staff on board. I wouldn't be bringing alcohol, but I saw some people that brought a bagged lunch and were having their own fruit. In this instance, I purchased the light refrigerated food that the train had available. I had a wrap on the way to Montreal, and on the ride home, I had a bagel with cream cheese, and that was enough to get me through the travel. The only other thing that I think I want to touch on, at least to what's important for this part of the video, is that I did some planning before going on the trip, and I was intentional about not putting extra stress on my legs during the 4 or 5 days before I left. And this was to give me the best possible outcome for not being in pain while I was gone. I had figured by the time I get home, I'd have some form of a recovery to face. But if I'm home, then, for example, my electric hospital bed is here for me to use, and it's not a big deal. It's harder for me without some of the equipment to help me during the recovery. So I would suggest you budget your energy and budget the use of your legs or whatever is wrong so that you can actually be set up for success and have the ability to enjoy the trip that you're taking. I wanted to spend a minute or two sharing why I'm posting the train view that you're now watching. When I was a young boy, I had the hip disease. It's called Legg-Perthes disease. The nearest doctor that could help me was in London, Ontario. It meant that I was forever taking the train from what I mentioned earlier, Woodstock, Ontario, to London, Ontario every 6 weeks for checkups. I feel at home on the train. I enjoy it. I realized why I was going to the doctor was quite serious, but I really enjoyed the train portion of this. It's much similar to when I go down to the water when my legs have been bothering me and I've just wanted to get out for a little bit. When I sit there and I watch the scenery going by, after about 45 minutes or so, anything that's been bothering me just doesn't have the same effect on me. and I'm able to be objective about it. I really enjoyed just sitting in my seat and watching the view. It's why I used my cell phone to record this video footage for you to enjoy watching. Even if you don't have a friend to go see, I would seriously suggest you take the train to the next main station and then come back the same day, just to get out and and to see how beautiful our country is. I happen to live in Canada, but all these rail routes will eventually be getting you out of a major town, and you'll be able to see the beautiful scenery that there is. When I go to my specialists, it's a similar view. There are, villages and cities along the way, but most of it is looking at the Canadian Shield and the trees and some of the crops that farms have growing, and it's gorgeous. I really, really like it. What I sort of wanted to finish this with is reminding you to take care of yourself and figuring out how best to express what you need. I think the biggest lesson I could share with you is if something's really bothering you and you can't quite put your finger on it, or you're up at night and you're concerned about something, try to use your logical brain to go sleep and let your mind recharge and see if you have a different perspective the following morning. If something if I wake up in the middle of the night and something's bothering me, I'll either type it on the tablet, cell phone, or piece of paper by my bed and then deal with it in the morning. It's hard making good decisions when you're overtired or feeling the emotions that come with the situation that's quite frustrating, and you're trying to make the best decision of what's available to you. If you can fight that impulse to deal with it immediately, and even waiting an hour or two, I do think there's some benefit to that. And I certainly wouldn't suggest to any of you to do what I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And I find that this helps me, and I thought it was worth sharing. I really can't overstate the value in taking care of your mind and taking care of your body. I suppose the more relatable might be for someone that has made a drunk purchase and discovered what they bought a few days later when it shows up. I've heard some of my friends online that have done this. I always find it a little bit amusing what someone wanted when what alcohol doesn't let your guard down and you buy something on impulse. I'm not sure that I have much more to say in this particular video. I did want to express my thanks for looking at the footage with me. I've had it up on the computer screen while I've been recording myself. As I've said earlier, I really enjoy taking the train. And I enjoyed this part of the trip. The train conductor made frequent announcements when the train had to pause or had to have a speed restriction to explain what was going on. And the staff were really good to me. They communicated well, and I I felt that I was cared about and heard by them, and they were easy to ask questions with, and you could tell that they enjoyed their job, all of them. In fact, I accidentally ordered my lunch in French on the way to Quebec. The service manager was talking to his colleague in French, and I started using French instead of English. I really enjoyed the time away. The friend that I went to see, and then the group that came. But it was really worth it to have spent time with the friend that I went to see. It's one of my closest friends, and he's always made me feel cared about and valued while I've been dealing with the problems that are in my hips and my knees. And I found that it was really worth it to go through the effort that would get me to Montreal and the activities that we had planned for while I was away. Thank you for enjoying the video part of this while I've talked. This was a really, really great trip, and I'm glad that I did it. And I certainly would recommend the train as a way of taking care of yourself and getting out, even if it's just a day trip to the nearest train station that's manned, and come around and come back to your hometown. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I'm really glad that I put the effort into doing this. Thanks for watching today's video. Have a good day. Bye for now.